Hey, what's going on? Welcome to The Doug Show. In this episode, we chat with Marty McLeod again. This is a continuation, an update for his success story. When we chatted with him last time, he was making about $500 a month, but currently he's making about $1,000 a month. Again, Marty drops some nuggets of wisdom, shares some inspiring advice, and at the end, after the interview, I'll answer a few questions, maybe tell a little story. We'll see how it goes. By the way, the questions I'll answer are these, or at least these are the subjects. So someone bought some links, which they now realize is a mistake, and they have way too many links and they want to know what they should do. The next question is around adding KGR terms to an existing site. And the third one is about finding keywords that have a 0 all in title. This is for the keyword golden ratio. So they have a keyword golden ratio, a KGR, of like 0, but the search volume is a certain level, and the person wanted to ask about that. So we'll get into those after the interview. So let's hear what Marty has to say. I want to welcome back Marty. Marty, you were on the show a few months ago, actually.
Right.
I talked to you back in like July of 2018, and we want to get an update. So thanks for taking time out of your day.
My pleasure.
Now, for the people that don't know you, can you just introduce yourself as far as like your background, where you're from?
Right. So I do have a full-time job. By day, I'm an engineer, the usual 9 to 5. I live here in Georgia, not too far from Atlanta. So this is my part-time thing, my websites. I have 2 sites. And I was a member of your course. I started my main site last year, actually. And by the time that I spoke with you in that episode of on your YouTube channel, I had hit my first real goal at that time. So
Nice.
it's been a long journey, and this is where I am today. So awesome. Still moving along.
So back in July, you were making, I think you just hit the milestone of $500
exactly.
a month. And Where are you at right now? This is about 6-7 months later. It's early 2019 when we're recording this.
So I've had some dips and peaks, but I'm at about roughly 1,000 a month now. Traffic fluctuates sometimes, as some people are aware of. And so the goal right now is just to hit the next goal, which is 1,500 per month.
Nice.
Really still working hard on it.
And congratulations, by the way. Like once you hit the early milestone, you're probably thinking, "Oh, I can't believe I did it." And now it's like,
absolutely.
It's like it's still coming in, and like the course was an expensive investment, and you obviously put in a crazy amount of time. But like now, you probably find that it's fairly. I mean, you want to grow, but it's fairly passive at that $1,000 mark, right?
Right. There's always little things, bits and pieces here that need to be fixed, and most of it is it's very passive. A lot of the stuff is just me improving and then going up and cleaning up the site. Say I had an issue with the images as a perfect example. I did things the wrong way in the beginning. I said, I can do that much better. There's no reason for it to look like that. And that takes a lot of work too, but it's well worth it, of course. Little things like that, keep learning, reading, watching videos, listening to podcasts. I know you've got a new podcast coming out. I'm sure I'll learn more from things like that.
Cool. Now let's sort of step back and talk about how you chose the category, the niche, and the products that you were going to cover.
For my main site, when I first started the program, members of your course are able to talk with you about it, and we go through the evaluation process for a niche. Mine is actually pretty competitive, so it's not really it's one of the more difficult ones, which I didn't understand had that perspective at the time, but because there are a lot of buyers out there, it's related to, we'll just say it's a consumer products that a lot of people have heard of. And it's basically building a site, doing really good keyword research in order to rank in the top 10. And that's what made it possible. It always comes back to the same basic principles, almost always.
Okay, cool. And, from your perspective, you mentioned it's pretty competitive, but you didn't really know until you got started. Like, what insights do you have for people? Because this is where people get hung up, right? They know that it's super important to make a selection that is not going to be too competitive, but you also want enough competition to know that it's a validated area to even that you can make money, basically. So what tips do you have?
Yeah, well, one big thing I think that really stands out that's helped me so much is, and I know I think it was the Moz bar you had people using, recommended. There's also, you can use another extension for Chrome called SEO Quake. And what I'll do is in my case for keywords, but it could be just checking a niche, same principle. I use with that extension installed, I can see the stats for all the competition that comes up in the search engine results page or SERPs. Mm-hmm. And that gives you a lot of insight into the big picture. You need to look at the big picture. Are there some weaker competitors? Do I stand a chance at ranking in this niche? Or is it all really tough and probably not a good idea? It gives you a lot of insight, as well as really finding out across the board, generally speaking, are there a lot of buyers for this product? A lot of different variations of this niche, these products. Is there this? Is there that? This for moms, this for babies, for example, for this and that and the other. If there are a lot of those, that's even more potential keyword ideas as you go further on down the road, as opposed to something that's very limited in terms of keywords that you might be able to find, because it makes a huge difference.
Right. I mean, the competition analysis is really difficult because once you start looking at an overall topic, there are hundreds, thousands of different keywords or products. So it's really hard. I get emails often, hey, is X niche a good one to go after? The answer is, well, I don't know. First, it's like, I have no idea. Mm-hmm. And then really it's like, yes, most of the time there's enough wiggle room where you can like find a spot to provide valuable information to people that are interested in that like sliver that you're targeting. Yeah. So it's really hard to answer that question. And a lot of times it's like, yeah, it looks a little competitive, but why don't you I think I remember some of those coaching calls where you and I were talking, and it was like, it could be a little tough. Hopefully I gave you good advice. Like, it could be a little tough, but it's hard to tell until you start publishing stuff. Yeah. And then, chances are, right, and you probably found this, Marty, where it was like maybe it took a little bit longer than you thought it would, but if you can get past that period, the competition drops out, right?
Right. Yeah, definitely. That's a very good point. I have to think, when you begin this, you don't always understand. You need to think long term, because some things can take a long time to rise up in rankings and for the site to start building up momentum. If you're thinking too short term, as in I want to see results much, much faster, you're far more likely to get discouraged, and some people potentially even give up because of that, which you've got to understand that. Think you're looking long-term gains, not short-term.
Right.
But it pays off. It'll pay off.
Right.
If you can change your mindset like that.
Exactly. And I was going to say, I got so excited, so I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
Of course.
I was chatting with my wife over the weekend, and, we're often in a mindset of like, how can I make this, whatever this is, make this happen as quickly as possible? And the decisions that you make, if you're looking, say, 6 months or even 18 months out, the decisions you might make are totally different than if you're thinking, hey, what about 2 or 3 or 5 years from now? Like, then the decisions you make are dramatically different, and you can make some pretty bad, dumb decisions if you're looking too short term. And you're like,
absolutely.
Yeah, that's what we want to do. We want things faster. And if you are a little more patient, then things could work out fine. So speaking of patience, how old's your site right now?
So my main site is, let's see. So gosh, it's less than 2 years.
Less than 2 years.
I guess it's 1 3/4 years or something like that. I'm trying to remember.
It's like a newborn child or something. It's like 47 months. So it's about 2 years old. Now, when you hit the 6 month mark, Google Sandbox is something people talk about. So at 6 months, did you see more growth? What about at 12 months?
Yeah, for that side, it took a little bit over 3 months once it got out for it to come out of the sandbox. My second one was actually faster by a little bit, but so it took about roughly 3 months for the sandbox period, and then progressively over the following number of weeks, the original 10 post sprint that you had us do in your course, begin to steadily see it kind of slowly rise up, as opposed to now where my site has a little bit more authority, and in some cases it seems to get treated favorably. Even potentially some things pop up overnight. Of course, that's somewhat unusual, but it just goes to show you that Yeah, there's a slow progression, and once you get to better days, things normally take a couple of weeks, but in some cases, much faster.
Okay, cool. And about how much content do you have on that first site?
Yeah, so I'm trying to remember exactly. It's roughly 60 now, 55 to 60. I'm trying to remember because some keywords I track separately, but yeah, somewhere like that. Let's just say 58-ish.
Okay,
something like that. Yeah.
Cool. And are you like actively publishing more content, or are you okay? So how are you dealing with that? Are you hiring writers? What's the situation?
So yeah, that leads. Even I'll have a question about that as soon as I finish my description. So I do it myself because up until this point, once I got a better understanding of what content should be based on the things I've learned from a variety of good references and good examples out there on the internet as well. Been doing my own, which takes a lot of work. It takes time, so it's a little bit slow for me to get it out. Say the most, usually 2 posts a week on the weeks that I'm doing the content. I'm hoping to get writers to speed up the process, and that leads me to my question I was mentioning that I've not had good results at all. I get back a lot of, on a good day, it's mediocre content from writers. So I don't know what you would advise a person to do,
Sure.
Doug, in that case, do I just keep looking, or is there a better route? I don't know.
So where have you tried to find writers so far?
I've started at usual places. I tried another guy again at Upwork. It might work out, but right off the bat, it doesn't seem super fantastic. I just tried Textrine. It was
Yeah.
I was going to give Text Broker a shot with a sample. So some of the main places, including Upwork.
And what was the main issue that you see, or actually, what are all the issues that you see when you get the content back?
Biggest thing is there's way too much fluff in it. It's not real material. Whereas when I personally write content, I try super hard to answer their search query, their question. I make sure to be very specific to the best of my ability. I'll find the information and I put it into words they can understand. And then I go into great detail explaining things. And what I get back a lot of times is it's very generic. They're obviously not putting in the time to look up the real answers and put it into content and deliver value. They're not doing it.
I know exactly what you're talking about, because you probably have some guidelines around word count, and then people are just filling it with like the transitional phrases throughout. So you end up with really like flowery language. I don't know if flowery is the right word.
A lot of filler, maybe.
Yeah.
You could say.
Yeah, so not mostly, but there's like, say 25% filler content to hit the word count. And then if you strip that out, you end up with like a tight, concise piece of content that someone will read. And, I've definitely found actually one of the top things when I audit a site and someone has not written the content themselves, I read them the content and it's clear. I'm like, there's no point. There's like 4 sentences with no real point. Like you could take all of that out. Like, would you keep reading if you landed on that site and they're like, no, I see what you mean.
Exactly.
And it's really easy to snag the content and then put it on there. So, okay, let's review what you said. So you've tried Upwork, which is my like place of choice. You've experimented with a couple content services.
Yeah. Yes. I stay away from Fiverr because for the most part, it's garbage. iWriter was terrible.
Yep. Text Broker is generally the same as iWriter.
Oh, really? Okay.
I think there may be I haven't used them in a few years, but generally it's like the same situation. I believe you probably can get really good stuff on Text Broker, but you'll be paying like the 5-star like top rating.
Yeah.
And it's extremely expensive at that point. So because the marketplace is so good on Upwork as far as the scope of people that you could find, I would probably keep trying to hire there. I would potentially experiment with different price points to see if you could attract different kinds of writers. And I really would emphasize, and when I've worked with writers, I would just tell them, I want you to aim for these word counts, but if it's shorter, that's okay. And I tell them, I don't want fluff. I don't want like these transitional phrases that are just not meaningful. Get it out. I'd rather have a shorter piece of content that was punchier and got to the point.
Right. Cool.
Usually a good writer will appreciate it. They will do that. And you can give them feedback. And if they don't get it, because eventually you will find a couple people that'll be able to deliver and not have all the flowery language there.
Okay. That's great. I appreciate that. I'll put that to good use, that advice.
And how much were you paying?
Okay, the last lady was $25 an hour. Didn't go very far because she was not. I was willing to pay more. I know that it varies on Upwork. I'm certainly willing to pay. I'm not trying to cheap out. So I started at 10, 15, then it went 20, 25. Some people want to do per assignment.
Okay.
Which, the last guy I was currently trying was 85. He said he wanted for one. I said, if it's good enough, I'm willing to pay that.
Okay.
I'm not sure, to be honest.
Yeah. If you can get it and you don't have to edit it, that'd be worth it, I think.
Yeah.
Especially when you look at, the site's bringing in money, you're seeing things rank, like you're not at a point where you're testing like, hey, does this work? You know that it's probably going to rank, even if all of them don't bring in revenue, that, some percentage of them are going to work out. So,
right.
Yeah, I'd keep testing, and basically probably like most organizations, HR is like really difficult to deal with. People are the worst. So it's like, if you're trying to hire people, then you're going to have like issues. So even if you find a great writer, like, they may bounce at some point. So.
Yeah, I kind of expect some of that.
And do you have any tips for like hiring writers? I know you haven't successfully like found the right one, but what's your experience with it?
Well, of course, we had the things that we learned from you from the course. I took that and just kind of modified it a little bit. So primarily, I would say it would be trying to get your writer to use conversational tone, because Americans, one thing I noticed is a lot of content that's put out is not really natural for Americans and people in the West. We don't talk or write like that normally. Contractions are good. Using smaller words, more understandable, because for one thing, my main site, especially my main site, my audience, the reader audience, demographics are so wide. It's everything from young people to, it could be a grandmother. And you can't throw down a bunch of super big words and technical jargon. You need to make it go high on readability. Tell your writer that you want to use small words where possible. If they have technical words or anagram, spell it out. Clarify what it is. Yep. I try to get them to use H2s, or at least section off subsections, subtitles. Use a lot of those, because in the content I divide it up clearly. Small paragraphs, two to three sentences at the max, sometimes one sentence. But especially because on mobile, it's very different. When on a little bitty screen, those turn into long paragraphs, if not.
Yeah, definitely. I know exactly what you're talking about with the writers. Basically, we're taught to write in the third person, right?
Yeah.
Is that right? The third person.
Right.
And it's boring, right? It's really boring.
Very
and
much.
You need to write in the first person. It needs to be conversational. I have had some writers that like go all the way to the other end, where they're like, it's almost like, they're writing an email to like their friend or something. And I don't know, at some point they lose me when they're, when it almost reads like an Instagram update or something.
Okay.
So anyway, yeah, more casual is good. And it's hard. I mean, once you give people the approval and they get the tone and all that stuff, then usually they get it. 'Cause I mean, that's how like people do speak. All right, cool. Now you said you did a lot of writing. We were chatting earlier. You mentioned you were getting into copywriting a little bit. So tell me about that.
Yep. There's a lot of material out there. And if you go looking on the internet, basically it usually boils down to people recommending these top courses. The thing is, the best copywriting courses are at least several $100s, if not almost $1,000 or even more. Or they're almost impossible to find. That's what's crazy. But I had the idea over the Christmas break. I went on Udemy.com, which is great for a very popular site for courses and various training of all different kinds. And I only paid $12, and I got one of the top rated copywriting courses, because I wanted to improve what I thought was already a good idea, and that's the conversational writing. But I wanted to improve influencing sales and clicks, because that's basically what we're doing. Is we have a site is helping people to buy. It was some of the best money I ever spent. It was a relatively short course, but it confirmed a lot of my things about what we were just talking about the style of writing, as well as ways that I could improve, turning features into benefits, asking, so what? If I want to write something, so what? Why does it matter to this person? Write it in the way that they want to know about, make them feel good or want this, and things like that. There's some basic principles in there, and that helped a lot.
Okay. And if you had, I hate these kind of questions, but I'm going to ask you anyway. If you had like one tip for someone on their affiliate site to improve the copywriting a little bit, based on your knowledge, the course, like what would you give them?
Yes. So I would, and it's a great question because I've actually said this to people. So I would write in a way, just like we just described, conversational tone that paints the product, tells them what they need to know about the product, but in a good way that helps to make them say, yeah, you know what, I think this would be good for me to buy. And then don't be afraid to be clear with your call to action. Make sure that is there and you lead up to it. And by the time they click, they stand a very good chance of already having decided, you know what, I might pick up one of these.
Right.
Yeah. Don't be afraid to tell them what you want them to do. You know, click here and to read more or to check it out, blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
Yes. And it's like you should never rely on the person to understand what you are leading them to. You have to tell them directly,
yes,
click here, do this, and then blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. I've actually seen a couple of people's sites because I've talked to so many people, and in a couple of cases, the call to actions they weren't very good at all. And I understand why they weren't doing well is because it wasn't clear, where do I click on this? There was no button, there wasn't leading up to that. And there wasn't clearly a nice flow that leads up to them taking that action.
Yeah, exactly. And another situation that I see all the time is like people use images, and those will be affiliate links, and maybe they don't have any other proper call to action. But let's say you're just scrolling down the page, or even if you're on a mobile device and you're scrolling, you have no idea that the image, like, why am I going to click on the image? Like, no one's going to click on your image unless you put call to action in the caption. It's like, click on the image. Please click on the image to whatever. So
that's very true, because based on what the heat map data that I saw, that it wouldn't happen otherwise unless you specifically they knew to click on it. They weren't clicking on images.
Right. So, and for the people that don't know what a heat map is, can you describe that?
Oh yeah. So I need to make sure I get the technical terms clear. So a heat map is basically it can be a plugin, it can be a service, whatever. It records and identifies where people are clicking on a post in terms of the most activity and the least activity, it's also sometimes they use the same word for a scroll map, where you can see where people went to in a post and spent the most time reading. That's also very helpful sometimes. You learn a lot from both of those.
Okay. And so with that information and then your copywriting, like what things have you learned about images or calls to action or the heat map in general?
Yeah, so I found that a table of contents does very well. Based on the data that I have so far, I'm putting my products at the bottom of my post and my general content at the top. It seems to be actually doing better. Some things are counterintuitive sometimes. Based on what I saw, I need to have clear subtitles and subsections where people can know where they can click to get to it. Some people want to read through the whole thing. Some people want to jump right to the 5 best, blah, blah, blah. It needs to be clear, and it needs to be spelled out where they can go and how they can do it. Don't use any funky colors, so things that are unusual that people don't expect to be there. Most people are used to things being like a blue links, for example, as opposed to bright pink or something crazy. People are inherently accustomed to things working a certain way. And if you keep it as simple as possible, help make it easy for them to find what they want and then go through your content and then possibly buy and click and buy.
Got it. And just want to double check, because there's a lot of different sort of conversions or positive signs that you may see. So by putting the top 5 posts or the top 5 products or whatever the choices are at the bottom, you're saying there's an improvement. What is the improvement?
Yes.
Is it sales? Is it time on site, or what?
It was actually my time on site seemed to be pretty good either way, but for some reason sales was better. Clicks and sales were better, specifically with the best products. My product section on the bottom. I'm not 100% sure why that is. I think it's potentially trust, because they see the pre-existing content before they get there, which kind of validates this is a legitimate post. This guy's got a lot of information here. I can go ahead and down here and find one. That's my thought process, but I'm not sure about that. That's a little bit harder to figure out.
Yeah, I mean, you really wouldn't know. And I guess the one thing I could add is, for example, like a sales page, of which I've done many. Typically, you have the, all the copywriting stuff that we've studied, you have like the story, right? You have the story, the background, all the benefits and those sort of things. And then at the very end, then you go for the sale, right? You don't jump right in and say, click here, do this. Although, sometimes people may put a link up at the top and it's like, if you want to get right over to Amazon, for example, but like on the sales page, typically, you need to rope them in and focus them and get them to pay attention to the things that'll help them make the decision, which that totally makes sense to you from what you said. Yeah.
I may say differently in the future when I get more data, because it's all about making sure finding data. There's a couple of different ways to do that, but based on what I've seen so far, that's correct.
I'm going to completely change subjects. So let's do a brisk transition over to why are you doing this? What made you get started in affiliate marketing? Long
story short, I forget how I did it, but I was cruising the internet years ago and I saw guys who were living in another country and making money online, and it blew my mind. And I don't have those software skills these guys had, so I couldn't do that just as a regular contract worker living remotely. So I thought, well, how could I make money online? What's actually real? Long story short, that's how I found about you. My ultimate goal is I want the freedom to travel, live where I want to, and be my own boss. And also have control of what I produce and what I do. I enjoy the creative aspect and content and things like that. Helping people is nice too,
Very cool. I think I remember from our first interview, there were a couple other people that you followed too. Do you want to mention any? I mean, I'm happy to.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because what I found over time is there's just like a handful of people who are really good, like you and a few other guys who are really legit and have solid advice. So, of course, Doug Cunnington, of course, Don Wells and Human Proof Designs, the Authority Hacker guys. They all also have podcasts as well as articles. Let's see who else. Actually, Ahrefs has their own YouTube channel. It's short but sweet, and they provide a lot of, even if you don't use their tool, there's a lot of information there that applies to affiliate marketing as well. It's just it's practical, actionable stuff. I definitely highly recommend that. But those were the 2 or 3 biggest names that come to mind right now. Yeah.
Cool. And I'll mention, all those guys are great. I followed a lot of them at some point in time, still do for some others. And then Ahrefs, like some of the best like blog content, because they have so much data and they have access to so much information. So their YouTube channel is very good. Their blog is fantastic. If you want like long form case studies where they like use data, most of the time, it's really hard for people to get that information and they just have access to it. So what were you going to say?
Oh, sorry. I forgot one guy. He was the one who kind of sent me down the road of copywriting and how I actually did my text links. Very different than when I started. Kyle Trouble, his site he's a big affiliate guy, but he's also in travel and things like that. Not really Amazon, but he's one of the people who said, try to reach out to the reader with emotion and appeal to them that way. Don't just have a cold block of text. Mm-hmm. Also try to make your links flow naturally. It helps I found that extremely helpful, and it kind of motivated me to learn more about copywriting and the sales pitch and things like that, like you guys are so good at,
It's super interesting. Like if people are trying to like do the, next level stuff, I think the copywriting is like super valuable. And I wish just working a corporate job, I was starting to throw in some copywriting ideas in my like business emails, which was so much different than, you probably get a ton of emails at work and stuff, but like the terrible writing where it's just blocks of text, and sometimes people are, they don't get to the point, there's no executive summary and it's like a page long and it could have been a paragraph. So just using copywriting, like in general, to communicate is like super helpful. Even if you don't think you need it, you'll probably appreciate it. So.
I greatly underestimated why it's so important. I was so naive about that, but it's true. It's very important. One of the biggest things I learned along the way was people often make a buying decision based on emotion. Mm-hmm. And that's very powerful. If you write with that kind of stuff in mind and appealing to the reader as opposed to being a third-party style, as you're right. Because that's what I did when I started. And I went back and redid all of that content, and that's much better now. It's laid back and friendly. I'm trying to help you kind of style, and here's why it's great, and it'll solve your problem, and yada, yada.
Nice. Do you have a handle on how much the conversion rate improved from like the old stuff to, how it stands now?
Back then, I don't think I had tracked it very well, but it was a few percent back in the original days. But my site was really young. Now I averaged somewhere between 12 to 14%.
And that's as reported from the Amazon dashboard.
Yes, you're right. Yep.
So probably it sounds like you went like 100%, assuming it was like 5 or 6% before. Yeah. So you basically doubled your conversion rate.
Yeah. I can pretty confidently say that. It's been pretty steady at this level. Yep.
Nice. And I think that low double digit range, 10, 12, 14% is really high. Like not that many people have that. And I think that's probably twofold. One's keyword golden ratio, which I know you utilize. Yep. And then the other is like the solid copywriting and just attention to like trying to improve that stuff.
Yep. I make sure to have the user experience of my sites are very good. It's clear. It looks like a good brand that you would trust if you landed on my page and you had no idea, had never been there before. It looks like a real brand. Easy to read. I don't give off any weird vibe when you land on my website like a lot of affiliate sites do. There to push you to buy something, click a button. I try not to take that approach at all. I try to apply what I've learned from the big guys.
Right.
And it seems to be working very well. And I'm actually a lot happier with what I work on because of that too. Feel a lot better about it.
Very good. So going back to like your why and why you started the site, so you wanted to be able to travel, work on something more interesting. So just curious, like where do you want to travel? You could daydream here. Tell me a story if you want.
Sure. So I do speak a fair amount of Spanish, and I've been to some Latin countries, but I've never been to Asia. And I've never been to Europe. And I know that there's some guys who live abroad who are making money online. The online entrepreneurs, they're living in Asia and places like Ukraine. So I'd love to go to places like that, stay for a while, maybe stay in Colombia for a couple months, and at least have the opportunity. That's kind of the daydreaming. As far as the specifics, I'll iron that out when I get there. But I would love to go to Ukraine for a while, and then maybe some parts of Asia. Who knows where?
Sure. And the dollar goes pretty far in those areas. So
exactly.
You don't have to have as much, you don't have to replace your day job income necessarily.
I've already got I know what my estimated budget needs to be, my earnings versus expenses. The information is out there. If you just look around and try to find it, there's some solid answers out there, and there's guys already doing this, and they lay it out for you. So
sure. And I'll give, little shout out. I'll put links in the show notes and description and all that stuff. But my friend Rob Atkinson, he lived in Thailand for I think a couple years or so. But when he moved out there with his wife, they basically they were making money online, and then some sites got penalized and it dropped to zero. But luckily, they already had plane tickets. They were on the way, right? So they had to figure it out, and the cost of living there was low enough. He had some time to figure things out and slowly grew everything back up. It actually wasn't even that slow. It was a different time back then in 2014, 2015. Yeah. So he was able to get things pumped back up pretty quick, and he's doing well. So it's amazing how many people I know who have sort of a digital nomad type lifestyle. Which would you travel around a bunch, or would you kind of set up a home base?
I think I would. For a little short while, I would travel around a little bit, and then I would set up a home base once I found a place I thought was a good fit.
Yeah, my wife and I we traveled in the U.S. We traveled with our dog who passed away years ago, but we were traveling around, and we were like, well, we don't want to go international. We want to bring the dog everywhere. So we traveled around the U.S. and did road trips instead. So
that's cool.
Did a lot of domestic travel. Now, of course, in the U.S., we didn't take advantage of the dollar arbitrage situation. So we went to more expensive cities most of the time. So it was expensive, but it was cool to see other places, of course. I forgot. We also stayed like a month. So we would go somewhere, like rent a place, set up shop. So it's not like so rushed. Cause like, when you go on vacation, you feel like you have to do everything and then you end up like really tired. So
absolutely.
So we would just stick around for like a month. We'd get to go like shop at the stores, live like locals, and we didn't feel rushed. So anyway, all right. For people that are maybe like just getting started, or maybe they haven't started yet and they're thinking, hey, that would be great to have more, income revenue coming in. Any tips for people who are thinking of getting started?
It always boils down to two things. You need a good plan and you need to always take action. So they need some kind of plan to know how to approach this, because I've actually heard that come up several times. People have even bought a ready-made site and then they don't know what to do. You need I definitely recommend 5-figure niche site course. It's actual stuff that you do, and it's a plan that's clear. Tells you here's what you do, point A to point B, yada yada. And then they need to just really be consistent about actually being serious about doing the work. You're going to make mistakes in the beginning, and that's okay, because it's just how it is. It's a process, right? Nobody learns overnight and becomes a millionaire. You need to just keep trying and keep learning, and you'll get better and better and better and smarter and smarter and smarter. You'll find more and more opportunities for things like keywords and things to write about and niche ideas, whatever the case may be, and that leads to more success.
To the point of using a framework. Thanks for saying that about my course. I think it does work pretty well. I did have, this has been a few weeks ago, someone bought the course. They went through the first couple units, and I have a very generous return policy. I try and force people to do the work, by the way, with return policy. Like I try and, take the risk away though, right? You got to remove risk from a copywriting perspective. I remove the risk and I'm like, hey, it's on me. If you do the work, it should work out for you. Now, this guy or gal, I'll just keep it generic. This person got the course, went through a little bit, and then they were like, oh, you know what? I already know that stuff. I don't think it's very useful. And I was like, well, did you go through the exercises? Did you brainstorm? Did you do competition analysis? Like, did you do the work? And they didn't. And that's why they were unfulfilled. They just thought, oh, I already know that stuff because I've read about it. I've heard it on a podcast. I've watched YouTube videos. And it's not very useful to like know how to do something if you can't execute it. So we could like read, there's all the analogies, right? You can read about like swimming. You can read about riding a bike. You can read about having sex. But until you get in there, like,
it's completely,
you don't know, right?
A whole other world. Apple, it's reading and doing are two different things, as I always say. It's tremendous difference. Taking action is just getting off the couch and actually doing something is one of the biggest obstacles for, I would dare say, the majority of the population. That's the biggest thing I run into with anyone who's ever asked me about this topic. So most people just aren't willing to try. They're not willing to actually to try and work on it. If you're willing to do that and you're motivated, the rest is up. It's definitely possible.
You could figure it out. Yeah. Now, mistakes. Now, you mentioned a couple of times, hey, you're going to mess up a little bit. Do you have any like fresh mistakes that you made in the last 6 months since we chatted?
Last 6 months. Let's see. Anytime that let's see here. Gosh, it's a great question. It's
great you haven't made any like notable, huge mistakes in the last 6 months. I think it wasn't too long ago. Actually, while we're recording this, it was only a couple days ago, I sent out an email to my email list and I was like, hey, I don't know if you got this. I was like, hey, thinking of doing like maybe a little mastermind thing. And I only expected, Marty, like maybe 10 or 12 people to reply back. I have like 100 replies back. So I just said, hey, shoot me an email back, just reply instead of setting up like a form or something like that. So anyway, that was a silly little mistake that I made, even knowing that I'm sending out an email to, a few thousand people and there's a chance that a lot of people may reply, but hey, I didn't think of it. So sometimes you just take some action and then you have a data point on what not to do. I mean, it's always valuable feedback to take action and do something, even if it kind of blows up in your face. So if there's anything else that we should highlight as far as, beginners getting started or any other thoughts, like when people do ask you about this sort of thing?
I would say, so a really good piece of advice is if you're a beginner and you have a site or you're starting one, if you're aware of somebody who is making money and they're trustworthy, I would definitely ask them nicely if they would take a look at your site and give you feedback before you get too far, because that's extremely valuable sometimes, because the things that I've seen tell me a lot about a lot of people make the same mistakes. I keep seeing the same patterns. Honestly, another really big piece of advice I give people is, it doesn't have to be perfect. Honestly, try hard to do your best content from the beginning and the best setup of your site and things like images and all that from the beginning, because it's a lot easier than having to go back and do it all over again. Make your site look halfway decent. Don't just throw some crap together, because a lot of people don't even get a good logo. They just really don't try very hard. It's unfortunate, because as you teach in a course, you want to have a domain name and the name of your site that's broad enough that it can lead to more things and better things. But if it's brandable, it looks like a trustworthy name, it gives a good impression, good user experience. It's far better than something that looks like, this is my site, click here,
right.
buy this. There's a lot of that out there, and it doesn't have to be that way. You don't spend a bunch of money to do that either. You can even make your own free logos in Google Drawings, and they look great, because I've done that.
And I use Canva a lot, like for all my YouTube video thumbnails, which, I'll be honest, some of them are awful, right? Because, just because you have the right tools doesn't mean you end up with something good every time. But it's free, right? You can literally, you don't have to hire people. You don't have to make it complicated. Now, I realize we're saying like two opposing things, where it's like, take action, but also try to do a pretty good job. Like, you're just going to have to get started, and you'll make some mistakes, but you could always fix it, right? So you described, Marty, cases where the content wasn't quite right, but you've gone back and you could iterate.
In other words, I tell people, don't half-ass it knowingly in the beginning. At least make the effort in the beginning.
Right. Now, getting specific, you were talking about having a site that looks pretty good and all that. Are there any themes that you specifically like using?
Yeah. So on both of my sites, I'm using Rehub, and I know several other guys at least who are using that. And, I have only very minor complaints about it. In general, it looks really good and does what I want to do, and it's pretty easy for me to put up another post. And I got a bunch of different short codes, and I can even combine them and make some cool stuff. And it's been helping. Having something better than when I started helped me a lot. Having a good paid thing helped me better than a crappy free thing, by far, definitely.
Sure.
A lot less headache.
And because, you told me about Rehub, and a couple other people in the course did too, I actually picked it up and started playing with it a bit. And there's some really nice capabilities with the short codes to create, say, like a pro and con list, some richer formatting without the overhead and bulkiness of like a front end editor, which I tend to hate. A lot. So the short codes are pretty easy to work with, and you can create, you could create like a content template where you throw in the short codes and then you fill in the areas which you need to, do. Is that how you do it, or do you have like a template saved that you pull up?
I don't currently have a template, because mine is, I can do it by memory, but for my short codes, I have snippets. So I save them in a file, or you can do this with a plugin that actually lets you insert a snippet too. Anything I've come up with already, I just save it in a little text file, and I can just copy paste in there.
Marty and I were just chatting, and I realized I didn't ask him anything about backlinks or anything. So what's the situation with backlinks?
Yeah. So early on, I followed the recommendations in your course for doing the commenting backlinks. I did a lot of that. I've done it for both of my sites. Some guest posts as well, although that's kind of one of my weak points, but it's a really good topic, because for the reasons that you make clear in both your course and your videos, because especially in my case, I see some where I might be ranking high, and I'll get slightly outranked competition. So it's definitely an area I need to give more attention to.
Okay. And as far as guest posts, did you get a few, or?
I got a few. I've had some people reach out, and I've had just a few I've done. It's possible, and you have to be very careful about this. It's possible that there's opportunities. There's some people who do have a legitimate site, and they'll let you write your own content. And again, I'd make that distinction: a legitimate site, not a junk site like on Fiverr and most of the other garbage. A legitimate site where you can post a backlink to your site as well. They're just trying to make a few dollars, so I'll write a nice post and put that on there and link back to my site as well.
Okay.
You have to be very careful about that, of course.
Okay. And like these people reached out to you like, hey, do you want to post on my site or something?
Some do, some don't. A lot of them, you have to find them,
Okay.
Or, yeah.
And you mentioned like it's an area maybe you should spend more time on. Like what things are holding you back from doing more guest posting or outreach or whatever?
Yeah, it definitely is a time hog from my perspective. From my experiences so far, that's quite a time hog. And when you've got limited free time. Currently, I keep seeing the 80-20 rule come into play, and I'm trying to improve upon where I need to spend my time the most, because there's a certain amount of things you'll do that pay off the most. That's the general principle, the 80-20 rule. We tend to sometimes, I think, not many people are crazy about backlink work.
Right.
It's not the easiest thing to do. So they think in terms of, well, I'd rather do something else. And I'm guilty of that as well at the time. So.
Yep, me too. I definitely have had like a content team running, and I was like, oh, I can maybe do some link building, or I can just find more content for the team to write. So I just stuck with that writing because it was easier. And afterwards, I realized, I should have been building more links, because a blend, doing the 80-20 on the content side and the 80-20 on the link side, you end up with a better blend of results at the end of the day versus like just spending time on like content. Because at some point, I don't think you're there yet, but at some point there's not as many topics for you to write about. Mm-hmm. And like you may just need more links to your site. So a lot of people don't enjoy the link building portion, but if you could somehow make that something you enjoy, you're usually in really good shape. I have a friend he's doing really well. Actually, I'll probably interview him sometime soon, but he's doing really well. He loves link building and setting up like big systems, and sort of like a very, it's like the long play where he is thinking very far out and setting up these complex systems to get a whole lot of links. It's pretty cool. So I'll share that information whenever I interview him. But yeah, he's making plenty of money, more than he would have in his old day job, because he loves link building. So.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
Yep. So do you have any tips for, people that are maybe hung up on the link building thing?
So when I write a piece of content, usually I refer, if I have any technical things that I mentioned, I'll have a backlink to a relevant backlink to something like on Wikipedia or an electronic site. I have 2 to 3 of those within my content, and also internal linking to other relevant posts within my site as well. Somewhere in there, usually I have 1 to 2 of those. Yeah.
Okay, great.
So external, and then these other kinds,
And the internal links. Yeah, very important. Yeah. A lot of people ask about WordPress silos or siloing content. Do you do any of that, or you just interlink? No. Okay.
Just interlinking right now.
Okay. Yeah. That's what I recommend too. A silo is just a pain in the ass to set up.
Right.
You'll try to do the right thing and architect the site properly, but you're always going to make like some wrong assumption, and then it's a pain to fix.
Okay.
So yeah, just interlink well. If you can remember, how many backlinks total do you have to your site?
I'm really sorry. I don't remember off the top of my head.
Okay.
Since our last conversation, I did go back and document some. I'm sorry about that. I forgot.
Sure.
So the main site, remembering in terms of main like guest posts and things like that, I haven't updated it in a while, but it was like 50 and then 25 on the other one.
Okay.
So, but I have a lot more in miscellaneous, like the blog commenting. I can't keep track of those.
Right. And you end up with, because you could basically get blog comments whenever you want. So there will be like, dozens, hundreds of those potentially. And then you said about 25 and 50 guest posts.
I think that's right.
That's great. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. I mean, like, I think if you want to have, a $500 per month or $1,000 per month, like kind of, you don't have to have backlinks, but if you have a base set of like 25 or 50, that's usually enough to get you, playing and ranking. And then usually people will see the value of like putting the effort in there. And once they get their content done, they come back around and they're like, maybe I should do some link building too. Is there anything else you want to add, Marty?
Just more importantly, don't chase every little shiny object. Listen to somebody who he's really doing this online and has legitimate following and good solid knowledge, and follow that instead of listening to there's way too much noise out there pay attention to people who are really making money and are legit and trustworthy. Yeah, that would be one of my best comments, I think, closing. Yeah.
Very good. Awesome. Well, thanks a lot, Marty. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Doug.
Well, and I was going to say, you're doing all the hard work and you're, kicking ass out there. So I really appreciate it. All right. Marty keeps a low profile, like someone who wants to get things done, which is very smart. So if you want to find Marty, you can find him sometimes on YouTube live streams. He'll be in the chat. Otherwise, he's unavailable because he's working on a site and doing cool stuff.
If you really, really need me, you can find me. I won't be that hard to find, I promise.
Yeah. And I think, as an aside, we'll leave this in even, it's valuable to set up these barriers because you don't want everyone to find you. And I actually had some people, it was interesting because I get a lot of unsolicited advice. I may add. So I get a lot of advice and someone was like, hey, it's really hard to contact you. And I was like, I know. I realize it is. And, if you could find me, you probably have a more intelligent question than if I just threw it out there. Of course, that was a little while back. So now it's easier to find me and all that. But you're smart to keep the low profile. Then you can get good work done. All right. Thanks again. And maybe we'll catch up with you sometime soon, Marty.
Awesome. Sounds great.
Thanks again to Marty. Really appreciate him taking the time. So, and it's great that he talks about 5-figure niche site all the time. So I appreciate that as well. All right, let's get into the story time aspect here. My wife and I are moving. We're moving from Bozeman, Montana down to Boulder, Colorado, or generally that area. So it's sort of like northwest of Denver. And it's a great town, a little pricey down there in Boulder specifically. So we'll be sort of outside the city. So it's a big change. It's definitely a big change. We really like Bozeman quite a lot, but my wife, she got a great job opportunity and we decided it was a great idea for us to move down there. Now, interesting thing, that area is a place that we were looking at anyway. Before we decided on Bozeman. Once we got to Bozeman, it was a little bit smaller town, less traffic, which was a great contrast from where we're from in Atlanta. So anyway, we decided moving down there would be a good move, and we're pretty excited. I mean, there's a lot of cool stuff in that area. We have some friends in the Denver area as well. And for me, a beer person, there's just way more beer in Colorado. I mean, it is one of the top places to drink beer as far as the number of breweries and the quality and all that stuff. In fact, when we were down there a few weeks ago, I went to just the neighborhood liquor store and beer shop, and I was blown away by the selection of beers. And I've obviously been to Colorado before, and I've gone to bottle shops and stuff, but the one that's closest to where we're going to live is absolutely amazing. In fact, I joined their frequent drinker card. I don't know what it's called. That's what I called it. It's their frequent customer card, their loyalty program. So that's the first thing I signed up for. It's called Wyatt's. And I have their loyalty card on my keychain. So it's pretty cool. I bought a decent amount of stuff, and I'm only going to be here in Bozeman for a couple more days. My wife has already started work. She's already down there, and I'm staying up here for a couple more days, closing things out at the house and driving myself and the dog down, Georgie the dog. And I'm having some friends over tonight to drink some Belgian beers, saisons, triples, and I think there's a golden strong in the mix. So just have couple people coming over, going to drink some beers. The house is basically empty aside from I have a camp chair, some camping plasticware, backpacking plasticware, some paper plates, an air mattress, a few pillows, and just some luggage. So here for a few more days and just going to hang out with a few friends drinking those beers. So yeah, it's kind of crazy. I mean, this past couple weeks have been extraordinarily cold. I mean, it's just been colder than normal, even for Bozeman, which is chilly. In fact, in February, I believe if I remember this right, Bozeman got about 30 inches of snow, which is more than normal. And then the average temperature was like 11 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's including the high temperatures. Just, it was on average 11 degrees. So quite cold. I'm not sure what the normal average temperature is. It's a little warmer than that though. And the last couple of days have been brutal. I have to put boots on Georgie to go outside. She doesn't like the boots. She doesn't like them at all. But yeah, it's just shockingly cold. And I have a beard right now. I'll go outside, walk around, and I'll just have ice on my beard from my breath forming just frost and ice on my face, which is kind of funny because my beard isn't that big, but it's just so cold out there. So anyway, let's get to the questions here. The first question is about what to do when you have bad links going to your site. So the specific context for the email person who sent this in, the person who sent in the email rather, they said they bought some links when they first got started because they thought, that was a thing to do. There's a lot of advice out there. There's a lot of bad advice. There's a lot of good advice. This person apparently got some bad advice. He bought some links, potentially on Fiverr. I'm not sure where, but you could buy links that are terrible, that are going to do a bad thing for your site on Upwork or from services that say they're doing a good job. And I mean, it's hard to tell who to trust in the SEO world, to be honest with you, because there's so much that can kind of be hidden and just unclear. So anyway, this person bought links. They checked, I think specifically they said they checked on SEMrush, but you could check on other tools. You could check on your Google Search Console to see what links show up. And they realized it's a bad idea. They want to get rid of the links. And couple things. So number one, this person asked about what they could do about the links that they saw on SEMrush. Well, SEMrush is like a third party that gets data, and Ahrefs is the same way. Majestic is the same way. Moz is the same way. Any of the other companies that have a backlink database that you're interested in, those are just third parties that gather the information. So to remove them from the third party data is not helpful. Who cares? It doesn't do anything. No one gives a shit about the third party data, really. It doesn't impact your rankings. That's the point I'm trying to make. The third party databases don't impact your rankings at all. However, what does impact your rankings is the links that Google has in its database. That's why I would recommend, you can work off the Search Console. It's good to, if you have other resources to get the backlinks from Ahrefs or other tools, that's fine too. But the point is you want to disavow these links. And disavow is a process where you tell Google, by submitting a text file, you tell Google, don't recognize these links. We know these links are out here, but we don't want you to recognize those links. And then Google doesn't recognize the links. Thus, they won't hurt you. So I've done this a few times in the past. Negative SEO is a real situation. So in the case where you want to disavow links that are negative SEO, or if you purchase links that you think are bad at this point, or if you have links that you think are bad that you created, you can disavow them and it will be fine. It's not going to be a big deal. You could just disavow them. Explaining this on a podcast would be difficult. So I suggest you go to the, I think it's like the Google Webmaster Guidelines for disavowing. It's very clear. It's just a plain text file, which you prepare. And most of the time when I do this, I just disavow an entire domain. So rather than disavowing individual URLs on a domain, I just disavow all the links from a specific domain. Because if one's bad, probably all of them are bad, right? So I just get rid of all of those links and disavow them, and then it's not a problem anymore. The next question here is from Dylan. And I got to be honest, it's a little bit long-winded, so I'm going to try to give you enough information without reading the whole thing, which it's just a little bit long, I would say. So I'm going to summarize a little bit. Thanks, Dylan, for sending it in. So basically, Dylan has found some keywords, some keyword golden ratio keywords that actually I could read this first part. He says, "Hey Doug, I love your stuff. You have a question. I have a question about the KGR method." So I just wanted to read that compliment. It's always good to hear compliments, you know. So first question from Dylan is, when you write an article, for example, it's like best ballpoint pens for sketching, but you also want to cover best ballpoint pens for some specific type of sketching, like cartoon or realistic sketching. Would you include all of those keywords in the main article that covers best ballpoint pens for sketching, or would I create a completely different page to cover the topic individually? Dylan says that he feels that they would be slightly conflicting with each other if they're done individually, and you can kill two birds with one stone with all the keywords in one piece of content. So there's no exact right way to do it. I would say for the examples that Dylan gave, I would probably write individual articles because those are directed at different searchers. These are different people, different audiences, and the people that care about realistic sketching versus cartoon sketching, those are different people and they have different concerns. So I would cover those individually. Now, some of them are more closely related, like cartoon and anime. Maybe you pair those up, but just look at it logically and think about the visitor. So how can you serve the visitor, the searcher? What are they looking for? And then if it's the same audience, I would put them on the same page. Different audience, I would publish them individually. Further, Dylan says that he's moving away from client SEO work and trying to get into affiliate marketing, and he's building out sites rapidly. And he has a handful of sites, and he's outsourcing the content and building them out and ranking them. He has some pages that are already built out, and he's going back to look at KGR terms, and he's wondering if he can alter the existing content on sites that he's already built to target keyword golden ratio terms. So can he alter the existing content, or should he write new content covering the topic, even though they may be conflicting? The answer is you can alter the existing content. It's sort of how you may optimize content that's already out there by updating it, changing the title to something a little bit more catchy and that sort of thing. So it's totally fine to alter the content, change it up, and put a different title in, add some subheadings that are targeting better, that sort of thing. So that's all good. And it's a good idea to go back. I mean, if you have an existing site just in general, that is a fine process to go through. There's no reason not to. All right. Last question from Mike. Mike is a newbie with niche sites, and he found my info before going live with his first site. So that's good. Mike says he's using the keyword golden ratio, the KGR calculator, which is free. If you sign up for the email list, you get a link to that. And Mike says, I found a lot of all entitled keywords where the all entitled equals 0 results, but the search volume is below 250. Should we still consider using the keywords? The answer is yes. So the search volume needs to be below 250 for the KGR. It doesn't have to be 250 exactly. So generally, yeah, go for it. Go for it. If the all entitled equals 0, then that means that there's no pages on the internet that are directly targeting it, which is a very good sign. So that's a great keyword, Mike. I suggest you go for it. Definitely go for it. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Doug Show, and look out for the next few episodes. We're getting updates from some of our past guests, our success stories. So we're going to hear from Duke and Evan as well. So be sure you look out for those new episodes. And if you're new to the show, thanks for listening. I really appreciate it. Have a listen to a couple of the other episodes, and if you dig it, please subscribe. And if you're already subscribed and you haven't left a review, or if you just want to leave a review and you don't want to subscribe, leave me a review on iTunes. It's very helpful to help spread the word of the Doug Show. In fact, if you can spread the word and just tell people about the show, that's cool too. So if you have like some friends online or something, like in Facebook groups, or maybe you got like an ex-girlfriend that you've been watching on Facebook or something like that, send her a message. I'm sure she would love to hear from you and some of your hobbies these days around affiliate marketing. I don't know if that's true, but anyway, leave a review. It's cool if you leave a review, and I'll give you a shout out if you do. I need to check that old list over there on iTunes and see if there are any new reviews out there. You have a look too, and while you're there, leave a review, leave a rating. Really appreciate it.